From the Chicago Sun-Times newsroom, I'm Natasha Korecki, and this is Off Message, our weekly political talk show. Joining me this week, editorial writer Kate Grossman, our watchdog reporter Tim Novak, and Sun-Times columnist Mark Brown. This week, there was a ruling that Mayor Daley will not have to take the stand in the ongoing Park Grill case, which you've been writing about quite a bit. Tim, can you just give us a quick overview of what is this case that's up in Cook County Court right now? What's the nuts and bolts of it?
Rahm Emanuel is trying to break this 30-year contract that the Park Grill got under Mayor Daley back in '02 to run this restaurant in Millennium Park, Daley's Crown Jewel. It was a deal that didn't require them to pay any gas, garbage pickup, taxes, and minimal rent payments until they recoup a lot of their money that they spent building it out. So at this point, they've paid about $8 million a year in rent, which is about the cost of all the stuff we've provided them for free. And the mayor claims we've lost $8 million, and he wants to break the deal, and the owners of the Park Grill are suing back because they want to sell their management company to Levy Restaurants, and they want to sell that for $8 million. $8 million is the operative figure everywhere you go here.
So how critical was Mayor Daley's testimony to all of this?
Well, the Park Grill believes that this deal was done with Daley's knowledge, and I think most people would agree that's true, that Daley was involved in planning the restaurant and determining where the bar is and everything. Daley, of course, can't remember any of that. And the Emanuel administration is ignoring Daley's role in this and blaming it all on Laura Foxgrover, the Park District official who got impregnated with the child of one of the Park Grill owners.
Mark, you called her the femme fatale of this whole...
I said she was cast as the femme fatale. Whether her role was really as important as Mayor Daley's role was, you know, I'm among those that was never totally convinced. Well, in her own words, she was the conduit at one point. But I believe that Daley was the driving factor in that deal. Now, in truth, I don't think any of this was, we were going to get a lot of truth-telling in this trial. Previously in a deposition, he basically said he couldn't remember much of anything.
Right, so if he couldn't remember a year ago, so was there any hope that he would get onto the stand and suddenly have this, like, okay, I'm going to tell everyone what really happened?
I mean, no, but it was important to try to get him on the stand because he's really the central figure in this case, and now they'll just have to rely on the deposition where he said, I don't know what I knew.
And aren't a lot of these witnesses who are coming up sort of saying the same thing? They didn't know, I don't remember.
Really, the fundamental legal argument here is the ownership of the property that the restaurant sits on. The Park District cut the deal with the restaurant to operate on land that's controlled by the city, but they never got city council permission. The restaurant says, why do we need to get city council permission when we had the mayor's permission? City Hall's argument is that we are a strong council, weak form of mayor government, so the mayor does not have the ability to give assets to anybody he chooses.
So tell me, it is unusual, first of all, that to have this kind of situation set up where everything is free.
I don't think there's probably any other restaurant in the city that has free garbage collection and free natural gas, which I think are two critical components in your restaurant.
Well, and they argue, right, that this was, it seems like a home run now that the Park Grill is a success, but at the time this was post 9/11. This, you know, Millennium Park was new. They're saying the owners of the restaurant were saying we're taking a big risk, and therefore that's why they say the city gave them all this stuff for free.
Does anyone buy that?
No, that's their argument, but I talked to some very prominent restaurant owners in town who did not bid for this property because they were told it's not going to go to you, so don't waste your time.
There have been various attempts to get Mayor Daley on the stand or to even sit for a deposition. In this case, he did sit for a deposition. From what you can tell from covering this, is it fair in this case?
He did have an ailment back in January on the day that his nephew pled guilty to killing David Koshman. Michael Sneed has reported that it was some form of a stroke. I think many people do believe he suffered some impairment because of that. Would that preclude him from testifying? Would that preclude his memory from recalling the events that he couldn't recall prior to whatever did happen to him? All I know is the Park Grill saw the affidavits in closed doors, and they decided that they would drop their subpoena against him.
Well, yeah, let's shift gears here a little bit. Mark, you've been writing quite a bit about the homeless issues in the city. Can you just give us a quick rundown on, what happened this week, what was coming out of City Hall, and then what ended up happening?
This week there was a situation where there had been a lot of homeless people pitching tents up in the parks along, between Lawrence and Montrose. There was going to be a big sweep scheduled every night this week until they got all the tents out of there. Just a few hours before they were going to be going out, they said, "Oh no, we're not going to do it." Well, then something happened, and one way or another they did go out. And then later this week, Alderman Cappleman came out against the city's SRO moratorium, which are the last chance housing for the poor in this city.
Who's really directing the policy here on how they're handling this, and is it any better?
Well, it seems to be that Cappleman is directing the policy, at least in his ward. He clearly does not want homeless people sleeping under the bridge, getting food from the Salvation Army truck, or living in a single-room occupancy hotel in his ward. And he claims, and Mark described in his column, he's a licensed social worker, and he says, listen, I know what's going on. I'm not some evil guy. The way that we deal with them currently doesn't work. And so he doesn't want the SROs, he doesn't want them sleeping on the street. He says that's a failed model. And he sort of flashes his social work credentials to say that, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm not some evil corporate guy.
Let anyone who's done more than me cast the first stone, right?
Right. This is a strand, in the social work world. It's, a conservative strand, and he represents it, and he represents it very well.
What's the fallout here then?
Usually when there's fallout involving homeless people, it falls on them. We had this situation similar about a year and a half ago when he first made the move on the Salvation Army food truck. He seemed to have quieted down, and I'd left him alone for the longest time. I liked it that way.
Well, so what is he offering in an alternative? He's saying this is not working, then what?
Well, that's the part that I don't understand. He says this, having people live in these SROs, which are admittedly often in pretty crappy condition, but it's certainly better than living on the street. And, you talk to anyone who works with homeless people, and the first thing you need to pull your life together is a stable place to live. You can't do anything else. So I don't know what model he's proposing, but I don't know of any model that works if people are living under the Wilson Avenue Bridge. You can't get a job, you can't get service, you can't function like that. So
I can't get a lot of explanations from him these days. We have a problem there, I admit.
Okay, well, let's switch to quotes of the week, and why don't we start with you over there?
All right, my favorite quote of the week was from Senator Dick Durbin, speaking on Walgreens considering its move to Switzerland. Is the corner of happy and healthy somewhere in the Swiss Alps, the senator asks.
Mine is from the attorney for the Park Grill, Steve Novak, who says, my clients were very disappointed that Mayor Daley wouldn't testify, and his clients looked like their dog died.
That's what he said?
No, I'm describing how his clients looked when they agreed that the mayor wouldn't testify.
Oh, so that's a Tim Novak quote.
The last part is my interpretation of the quote.
And mine is from the Chicago Board of Education. This week voted on a $6.8 billion budget. And so the Civic Federation says it's another stopgap measure. It's like they're playing from the state of Illinois playbook, and that's a really dangerous place to be.
This is actually from Mike Shrimp, the spokesman for the Bruce Rauner campaign. They came out with a new TV ad called Headlines, and one of the headlines, they attribute this to the Associated Press. They say, Quinn education cuts lead to teacher layoffs and larger class sizes. Actually, that was something that Bruce Rauner said. It was not a headline at all. And when Shrimp was asked about it, he said, quote, due to time and space constraints, the phrases had to be condensed. With that, thank you very much for joining us on Off Message, and thank you to our wonderful panel, and we'll see you next week.